Marcus Wellington thought the unusual activity in his basement was just his housekeeper, Elena, doing extra cleaning projects. The 59-year-old retired banker had been grateful for her initiative since his wife Catherine died, trusting Elena to manage his Greenwich mansion while he traveled. But when Marcus came home early from a business trip and heard multiple voices downstairs, he discovered Elena had been running a high-end brothel in his basement for 8 months. This is the story of how a proper Connecticut widower exposed an organized prostitution ring operating from his own home and dismantled a criminal network worth millions of dollars. By the time Marcus was finished, 12 people faced federal charges, and he had uncovered one of the largest human trafficking operations on the East Coast. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're listening from in the comments. You'll want to hear every detail of how Marcus turned his outrage into justice and protected his family's reputation from complete destruction. Marcus Wellington had inherited his Greenwich, Connecticut mansion from his parents, along with the family investment banking fortune that made him worth $8.2 million at age 59. The 12,000-square-foot estate sat on 3 acres of manicured grounds, featuring a wine cellar, library, and basement entertainment area that had hosted decades of respectable social gatherings. After his wife Catherine died from a sudden heart attack 3 years earlier, Marcus had struggled to maintain the property alone. The house required constant attention, cleaning, maintenance, landscaping, and security management that Catherine had previously coordinated. Elena Vasquez arrived through a high-end domestic staffing agency in early 2022, presenting impeccable references and experience managing luxury estates. At 38, she appeared professional, organized, and respectful of the privacy that Marcus valued during his grieving process. "Mr. Wellington, I understand you need someone who can manage the household independently," Elena said during her interview. "I've worked with prominent families who value discretion and quality service." "Discretion is essential," Marcus replied. "I travel frequently for business, and I need someone who can maintain the property without constant supervision. That's exactly my specialty. I prefer to work independently and only contact employers when necessary." Elena's references confirmed her reputation for managing large estates with minimal oversight. Previous employers praised her initiative, reliability, and ability to handle complex household operations without bothering the family with routine details. Marcus hired Elena as head housekeeper and property manager, providing her with full access to the mansion, security codes, and a substantial monthly budget for household expenses. He also gave her living quarters in the mansion's guest wing, eliminating the need for daily commuting. "Elena, I want you to treat this house as your responsibility," Marcus explained during her first week. "I trust your judgment on maintenance, cleaning, and any improvements you think necessary." "Thank you, Mr. Wellington. I'll take excellent care of everything." For the first 6 months, Elena exceeded Marcus's expectations. The house remained immaculate, grounds were perfectly maintained, and household operations ran smoothly without requiring his attention. Marcus appreciated being able to focus on his business interests and social obligations without worrying about domestic management. Elena seemed particularly dedicated to maintaining the basement areas, which included Marcus's wine collection, exercise equipment, and entertainment space that hadn't been used since Catherine's death. "Mr. Wellington, I've been organizing the basement storage areas," Elena reported in late 2022. "There's so much space down there that's not being utilized efficiently. Do whatever you think best. I rarely go down there anymore. I'd like to set up better lighting and ventilation systems, make it more functional for storage and cleaning." "That sounds reasonable. Use the household account for any necessary improvements." Elena's basement renovation project continued for several months, with contractors arriving regularly to install new electrical systems, soundproofing, and climate control equipment. Marcus assumed Elena was creating more efficient storage and utility areas. What Marcus didn't realize was that Elena was transforming his basement into a sophisticated commercial space for illegal activities. Throughout 2023, Marcus noticed increasing activity around his property, but Elena consistently provided reasonable explanations for the additional traffic and noise. "Mr. Wellington, I've hired a new landscaping crew," Elena explained when Marcus questioned the frequent visitors. "They're working on improving the gardens and maintaining the grounds more extensively." "The grounds look excellent. You're doing wonderful work." I've also been coordinating with specialists for deep cleaning projects in the basement. The wine cellar and storage areas needed significant attention after years of neglect. Marcus appreciated Elena's thoroughness and initiative. His utility bills had increased substantially, but Elena explained this was due to the extensive cleaning equipment and basement ventilation systems required for proper maintenance. The deep cleaning projects require industrial equipment that uses more electricity, Elena reported, but it's necessary to prevent moisture damage and maintain the property value. Cost isn't a concern if it protects the house. Elena's explanations satisfied Marcus because they aligned with his desire to maintain the property's condition and value. He trusted her professional judgment and appreciated not having to supervise renovation details personally. What Marcus didn't know was that Elena had converted the basement into a high-end brothel, serving wealthy clients who appreciated the discretion and luxury of a private mansion setting. The basement now featured multiple private rooms, each equipped with luxury furnishings, sound systems, and security cameras. Elena had installed a separate entrance through the basement service door, allowing clients to visit without being seen from the main house. The operation catered to affluent customers who paid premium prices for privacy and exclusivity. Elena advertised the service through encrypted networks, emphasizing the mansion setting and complete discretion for high-profile clients. By mid-2023, the brothel was generating more than $50,000 monthly in revenue, with Elena managing a network of women who worked regular schedules in Marcus's basement. The operation had become sophisticated enough to include security personnel, booking coordinators, and financial management systems. But Elena's success created problems that would eventually expose the entire operation. Marcus began noticing unusual patterns in late 2023 that didn't align with Elena's explanations about household maintenance and landscaping projects. The first concerning sign was the timing of activities. Elena's maintenance crews worked primarily during evening hours and weekends, which seemed unusual for landscaping or cleaning services. "Elena, why are the contractors working so late?" Marcus asked one Friday evening when he heard voices and car doors in the basement area. "They're doing specialized cleaning that requires the house to be unoccupied," Elena replied. "The chemical treatments and equipment can't be used when people are upstairs." "What kind of chemical treatments?" "Professional mold remediation and air quality improvement. It's technical work that's best done during off hours." Marcus accepted this explanation, but the pattern continued consistently. Every time he was home during evenings or weekends, there seemed to be maintenance activity in the basement that required privacy and generated significant noise. The second unusual pattern was the type of vehicles arriving at his property. Instead of work trucks or service vans, Marcus noticed luxury cars and expensive SUVs parked discreetly near the basement entrance. "Elena, the contractors seem to drive very nice cars for maintenance workers." "These are specialized technicians and consultants," Elena explained. "They're not regular contractors. They're experts in high-end property management who charge premium rates." That would explain the increased household expenses. Exactly. Quality work requires quality professionals. But Marcus's banking background had taught him to notice financial patterns that didn't make sense. The household expenses Elena was charging seemed excessive even for luxury property maintenance. The third troubling sign was Elena's increased security consciousness. She had installed additional locks on basement doors, upgraded the property's alarm system, and insisted that Marcus provide advance notice before entering basement areas. "Mr. Wellington, I need to coordinate with the maintenance teams," Elena explained when Marcus mentioned wanting to check on his wine collection. "Their equipment and chemicals can be dangerous if someone enters unexpectedly." "How much longer will these projects continue?" "Quality work takes time. We want to make sure everything is done properly." Marcus felt increasingly disconnected from activities in his own home, but Elena's professionalism and apparent dedication to maintaining the property made him reluctant to question her methods. The breakthrough came in November 2023, when Marcus returned unexpectedly early from a business trip. Marcus had planned to spend 3 days in Boston for investment meetings, but the meetings concluded earlier than expected. He returned to Greenwich on Thursday evening instead of Saturday morning, arriving at his mansion around 8 p.m. As he pulled into his driveway, Marcus noticed several luxury vehicles parked near the basement entrance: a Porsche, a Mercedes SUV, and a Tesla Model S. None of these looked like maintenance vehicles, and Elena hadn't mentioned any evening appointments. Marcus entered through the main house and immediately heard music and multiple voices coming from the basement. The sounds were distinctly social rather than work-related: conversation, laughter, and what appeared to be a party atmosphere. Concerned that Elena might be hosting unauthorized personal gatherings in his home, Marcus decided to investigate directly. He approached the basement stairs and heard Elena's voice clearly directing what sounded like business transactions. "Room 3 is available now," Elena was saying. "The gentleman in room 1 has another 30 minutes. "What about the VIP suite?" asked an unfamiliar male voice. "That's reserved for our premium client tonight. He pays extra for exclusivity." Marcus realized he was hearing Elena coordinate some kind of commercial operation in his basement. The conversation continued with discussions of pricing, scheduling, and client preferences that clearly indicated illegal business activity. Moving closer to observe without being detected, Marcus positioned himself where he could see into the basement through the stairway. What he observed shocked him completely. His basement had been transformed into an elaborate commercial space featuring multiple private rooms, each occupied by couples engaged in sexual activities. Elena was managing the operation like a business, coordinating schedules and payments while security personnel monitored the areas. Marcus counted at least 12 people in his basement: clients, workers, and Elena's staff, all participating in what was clearly a sophisticated prostitution operation. The wine cellar had been converted into a reception area where clients were greeted and payments were processed. The entertainment room now featured multiple private spaces with luxury furnishings designed for sexual services. Elena had built a complete brothel in Marcus's basement, using his home as headquarters for organized prostitution that served wealthy clients willing to pay premium prices for discretion and luxury. Marcus retreated upstairs to process what he had discovered and determine his response to this massive violation of his property and trust. Marcus spent the night planning his response to Elena's betrayal. His banking background had taught him that complex criminal operations required systematic investigation and evidence gathering before involving law enforcement. He began by researching Elena's background more thoroughly than he had during the hiring process. Using his business connections and investigative resources, Marcus discovered that Elena Vasquez was connected to organized crime networks operating throughout the Northeast. Elena's previous employment references, which had seemed impeccable during her interview, were revealed to be fabricated. The high-end domestic staffing agency that had recommended her was actually a front operation for placing criminal operatives in wealthy households. "This is much bigger than I initially realized," Marcus told himself as he reviewed the evidence of Elena's criminal connections. Marcus also analyzed his household financial records and discovered that Elena had been systematically overcharging for legitimate expenses while using his accounts to launder money from the prostitution operation. Over 18 months, Elena had charged more than $180,000 in household maintenance expenses that were actually payments to her criminal network. She had used Marcus's legitimate household account to process illegal income, making him unknowingly complicit in money laundering. Most concerning, Marcus discovered that Elena's operation was connected to human trafficking networks that coerced women into prostitution. Some of the women working in his basement were likely victims rather than willing participants. Marcus realized he was dealing with federal crimes that extended far beyond simple property misuse. Elena's operation involved organized crime, human trafficking, money laundering, and interstate commerce violations that required federal law enforcement intervention. He contacted FBI agent Sarah Mitchell, who specialized in organized crime and human trafficking cases. "Mr. Wellington, what you're describing is a sophisticated criminal enterprise," Agent Mitchell explained during their initial meeting. "Elena Vasquez isn't just running a brothel. She's operating a money laundering and human trafficking operation using your property as headquarters." "What's my legal exposure?" "As long as you cooperate fully and had no knowledge of the operation, you should be protected. But we need to move quickly to gather evidence and ensure the safety of any trafficking victims." Agent Mitchell explained that successful prosecution would require extensive evidence gathering, including surveillance footage, financial records, and documentation of Elena's organizational structure. "We'll need your permission to install surveillance equipment and coordinate a controlled operation to document the criminal activity before making arrests." Marcus agreed to cooperate fully with the federal investigation, understanding that his property had become the center of a major criminal enterprise. Working with the FBI, Marcus developed a plan to document Elena's operation while ensuring the safety of potential trafficking victims and building a comprehensive case for prosecution. The plan required Marcus to maintain normal routines while federal agents installed sophisticated surveillance equipment throughout his property. Hidden cameras would document all activities in the basement, while recording devices would capture conversations demonstrating the organization's structure and criminal activities. "Mr. Wellington, you'll need to act normally around Elena," Agent Mitchell instructed. "Let her know you're planning another business trip, which will give us optimal conditions for surveillance and evidence gathering. How long will this take?" "We need at least 2 weeks to document the full scope of the operation and identify all participants. Elena's network appears to extend across multiple states, so we want comprehensive evidence before making arrests." Marcus informed Elena that he would be traveling to Europe for business meetings, providing her with apparent freedom to operate without concern about his presence. "Take your time, Mr. Wellington," Elena replied. "I'll keep everything running smoothly while you're away." What Elena didn't know was that federal agents were monitoring every conversation and documenting every aspect of her criminal operation. The surveillance revealed that Elena's brothel served approximately 40 to 50 clients weekly, generating between $50,000 to $75,000 monthly in revenue. The operation included security personnel, transportation coordinators, and financial managers who helped launder money through multiple accounts. Most disturbing, the surveillance confirmed that several women working in the brothel were trafficking victims who had been coerced into prostitution through threats and manipulation. "Elena Vasquez is running a comprehensive criminal enterprise," Agent Mitchell reported after reviewing the surveillance footage. "This isn't just prostitution. It's organized crime with interstate trafficking components." The FBI identified connections between Elena's operation and similar criminal networks in New York, Philadelphia, and Washington, D.C. Marcus's basement brothel was part of a regional organization that moved women between different locations and served wealthy clients who valued discretion. After 2 weeks of surveillance, federal agents had gathered enough evidence to dismantle the entire network and rescue trafficking victims. The federal raid on Marcus's property was coordinated with simultaneous operations in 4 other states targeting Elena's criminal network. At 6 a.m. on a Tuesday morning, FBI agents surrounded the mansion while Marcus waited safely at a hotel. Elena was arrested in her bedroom, along with 3 associates who were managing the basement operation. Agents discovered detailed business records, client lists, and evidence of systematic money laundering through Marcus's household accounts. In the basement, agents found 12 women, 4 of whom were identified as trafficking victims who had been coerced into prostitution. The remaining 8 were voluntary participants who faced prostitution charges but were offered cooperation agreements in exchange for testimony. "We've dismantled one of the largest organized prostitution rings on the East Coast," Agent Mitchell announced during a press conference. "This operation was generating millions of dollars annually while exploiting vulnerable women." The raid also uncovered evidence of Elena's broader criminal activities. She had been operating similar schemes in other wealthy households, using domestic employment as cover for establishing criminal enterprises in upscale neighborhoods. Elena Vasquez targeted widowed men specifically, Agent Mitchell explained. She identified wealthy individuals dealing with grief who were likely to trust household staff and avoid close supervision of domestic activities. Marcus learned that he was one of at least 6 wealthy men whose homes had been used for criminal operations without their knowledge. Elena's network specialized in exploiting trust relationships to establish criminal enterprises in legitimate properties. The financial analysis revealed that Elena had stolen or laundered more than $2.3 million through Marcus's accounts over 18 months, using his legitimate household expenses to process illegal income. But Elena's arrest was only the beginning of Marcus's fight to restore his reputation and property. Elena Vasquez and 11 associates faced federal charges including human trafficking, organized prostitution, money laundering, racketeering, and conspiracy. The prosecution was handled by the U.S. Attorney's Office for the District of Connecticut, with assistance from federal prosecutors in New York and Pennsylvania. Elena Vasquez operated a sophisticated criminal enterprise that exploited both her victims and her unwitting employer, Prosecutor James Rodriguez argued during opening statements. She used Marcus Wellington's trust and property to build a multi-million-dollar criminal organization. Elena's defense attorney attempted to minimize her role by claiming she was merely managing prostitution rather than organizing trafficking and money laundering. "My client provided services to consenting adults," defense attorney Patricia Stevens argued. "This is a case of prostitution, not organized crime." But the evidence against Elena was overwhelming. Federal agents presented surveillance footage of the basement brothel operation, financial records showing $2.3 million in money laundering, testimony from trafficking victims describing coercion and threats, communications documenting Elena's leadership of the criminal network, evidence connecting her operation to interstate trafficking rings. Marcus testified about Elena's systematic deception and the violation of his trust and property. "Elena didn't just run an illegal business in my home," Marcus told the jury. "She turned my property into headquarters for organized crime, while making me unknowingly complicit in money laundering and human trafficking." The most powerful testimony came from trafficking victims who described how Elena had coerced them into prostitution through threats, debt manipulation, and isolation tactics. "Elena told me I owed her money for housing and food," testified Maria Santos, a 23-year-old trafficking victim. "She said I could never leave until the debt was paid, but the amount kept increasing no matter how much money I earned." The jury deliberated for 6 hours before returning guilty verdicts on all major charges against Elena and her associates. Elena Vasquez was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison and ordered to pay $4.2 million in restitution to Marcus and trafficking victims. Her associates received sentences ranging from 3 to 8 years depending on their roles in the organization. But Marcus's legal battles were far from over. Beyond criminal prosecution, Marcus faced complex civil litigation involving property damage, financial recovery, and reputation protection. Elena's criminal operation had created liability issues that extended far beyond the immediate crimes. Marcus filed civil lawsuits against Elena, her criminal associates, and the fraudulent staffing agency that had placed her in his home. He sought recovery for property damage, stolen funds, lost income, and the extensive costs of restoring his home and reputation. Marcus Wellington was victimized by a sophisticated criminal conspiracy, his attorney explained. Elena Vasquez and her network systematically exploited his trust while using his property for organized crime. The property damage was extensive. Elena's basement renovations had been designed for criminal activities rather than legitimate household use, requiring complete restoration to remove illegal modifications and restore the space to its original condition. Marcus also faced potential civil liability from clients who had used Elena's services and later claimed they were unaware the operation was illegal. Several wealthy individuals attempted to sue Marcus for enabling illegal activities they had participated in. "These men are trying to blame Marcus for their own illegal behavior," Marcus's attorney argued. "They knowingly participated in prostitution and are now attempting to avoid responsibility by claiming they were deceived." The civil litigation was complicated by insurance issues. Marcus's homeowner's insurance initially refused to cover property damage related to criminal activities, arguing that Elena's operation violated policy terms. After extensive legal negotiation, the insurance company agreed to cover legitimate property damage while excluding coverage for criminal activities. Marcus recovered approximately $800,000 for basement restoration and security improvements. The fraudulent staffing agency settled for $1.2 million after Marcus's attorneys demonstrated that they had knowingly placed criminal operatives in wealthy households without proper background verification. This agency was complicit in Elena's criminal scheme, Marcus's legal team argued. They provided false references and facilitated the placement of organized crime members in legitimate employment. But Marcus's most important victory was protecting his family reputation from permanent damage. Marcus's social standing in Greenwich had been severely damaged by the discovery of the basement brothel. Despite his innocence and cooperation with federal authorities, neighbors and business associates questioned his judgment and oversight of household activities. "How could you not know what was happening in your own basement?" was a question Marcus faced repeatedly during the aftermath of Elena's arrest. To address reputation concerns, Marcus hired a crisis management firm that specialized in protecting high-net-worth individuals from scandal-related damage. Marcus Wellington was the victim of a sophisticated criminal conspiracy, the firm emphasized in their public communications. He cooperated fully with federal authorities and played a crucial role in dismantling a major criminal organization. The strategy involved highlighting Marcus's cooperation with law enforcement and his victimization by Elena's systematic deception. Media coverage was carefully managed to emphasize the criminal sophistication of Elena's operation rather than any negligence on Marcus's part. Marcus also established a foundation dedicated to supporting trafficking victims and funding law enforcement training programs for investigating organized crime. The Wellington Foundation donated $2 million to anti-trafficking organizations and victim support services. "I want something positive to come from this terrible violation of my property and trust," Marcus explained during the foundation's launch. "If my experience can help protect other people from similar criminal exploitation, then it will have served a purpose." The foundation work helped restore Marcus's reputation by demonstrating his commitment to fighting the same crimes that had victimized him. Community leaders and law enforcement officials praised his cooperation and continued advocacy for trafficking victims. "Marcus Wellington turned his victimization into advocacy," said Congressman James Mitchell during a human trafficking awareness event. "His foundation is helping protect other people from the criminal organization that exploited his trust." Following Elena's arrest, Marcus implemented comprehensive security measures to prevent future criminal exploitation of his property. The security overhaul included both technological upgrades and personnel screening procedures. The basement was completely renovated to remove all traces of Elena's criminal modifications. Marcus hired legitimate contractors to restore the space to its original purpose as wine storage and entertainment area, with enhanced security monitoring throughout. "We're installing state-of-the-art surveillance systems that will monitor all areas of the property," explained security consultant David Torres. "Mr. Wellington will have complete visibility into any activities on his estate." The new security system included motion detectors, access controls, and monitoring equipment that would alert Marcus immediately to any unauthorized activities. All household staff would undergo extensive background verification through legitimate investigative services. Marcus also established new protocols for household management that required his direct approval for any significant changes to property use or access permissions. "I'll never again delegate complete household authority to any employee," Marcus reflected. "Elena exploited my trust by taking advantage of my grief and desire for privacy." The security improvements cost more than $500,000, but provided Marcus with confidence that his property could not be used for criminal activities without his knowledge. Marcus also worked with federal authorities to develop training materials for other potential victims of similar criminal schemes. "Wealthy individuals are increasingly targeted by organized crime seeking to exploit their properties and financial accounts," explained FBI agent Mitchell. Marcus's case provides valuable lessons about protecting against sophisticated criminal infiltration. 2 years after Elena's arrest, Marcus had successfully restored his property, reputation, and peace of mind. At 61, he had transformed his victimization into advocacy work that helped protect other wealthy individuals from similar criminal exploitation. The Wellington Foundation had grown into a significant anti-trafficking organization, funding victim services and law enforcement training programs across the Northeast. Marcus's personal experience provided credibility and insight that enhanced the foundation's effectiveness. Marcus Wellington's advocacy has helped law enforcement identify and prevent similar criminal schemes, explained U.S. Attorney Sarah Rodriguez. His foundation work has made a real difference in protecting vulnerable people. Marcus had also become a sought-after speaker for law enforcement conferences and wealthy community groups, sharing lessons about recognizing and preventing criminal infiltration of households and businesses. "The most important lesson from my experience is that criminals exploit trust and privacy," Marcus explained during his presentations. Elena succeeded because she understood how to manipulate legitimate relationships for criminal purposes. Elena Vasquez remained in federal prison with earliest possible release in 2031. Her criminal network had been completely dismantled, with dozens of associates serving sentences and trafficking victims receiving comprehensive support services. The broader impact of Marcus's case extended beyond individual prosecution. Federal authorities had used evidence from Elena's operation to identify and dismantle similar criminal networks nationwide. The Wellington case opened our eyes to how sophisticated these criminal organizations have become, explained FBI Director Patricia Chen. Marcus's cooperation helped us understand criminal techniques that we now use to investigate similar schemes. Marcus had also maintained relationships with other victims of Elena's network, creating an informal support community for people who had experienced similar criminal exploitation. "We understand what it feels like to have criminals violate your trust and property," Marcus said during a victim support meeting. "By working together, we can help each other heal and prevent similar crimes." Marcus's experience with Elena's criminal operation had fundamentally changed his approach to privacy, trust, and household management. At 61, he had learned to balance his desire for solitude with the need for security and oversight. Elena's betrayal taught me that trust must be earned gradually and verified consistently, Marcus reflected. I was too willing to delegate complete authority because I wanted to avoid the details of household management. Marcus had remarried in 2024, choosing a partner who understood his experience and supported his advocacy work. His new wife, Dr. Patricia Morrison, was a psychologist who specialized in trauma recovery and brought her own expertise to the Wellington Foundation. Patricia understands what I went through with Elena, Marcus explained. She's helped me process the violation and transform it into something constructive. The couple had developed new approaches to household management that emphasized transparency and shared oversight rather than delegation to individual employees. Marcus's social life had also evolved to include relationships with other crime victims and advocacy professionals, rather than exclusively wealthy social circles. My experience with Elena connected me to people I would never have met otherwise, Marcus said. Trafficking survivors, law enforcement professionals, victim advocates. These relationships have enriched my life in ways I never expected. The basement of Marcus's mansion had been transformed into offices for the Wellington Foundation, turning the space where crimes occurred into headquarters for fighting similar violations. I wanted to reclaim that space for something positive, Marcus explained. Instead of being reminded of Elena's crimes, I now see it as a place where we're helping protect other people. Marcus's case had become required study material in law enforcement training programs, business security courses, and criminal justice education. His systematic approach to discovering and documenting Elena's crimes provided a template for investigating similar operations. The Wellington case demonstrates how organized crime exploits legitimate relationships to establish criminal enterprises, explained Dr. Jennifer Walsh, who taught criminal justice at Yale University. Marcus's investigation techniques are now standard protocol for these types of cases. Federal law enforcement agencies had incorporated lessons from Marcus's experience into their training programs for investigating human trafficking and organized crime in residential settings. Marcus Wellington showed us that wealthy households are increasingly targeted for criminal infiltration, explained FBI Training Director Michael Torres. His case taught us to recognize patterns that we now use nationwide. Marcus had also consulted with security companies to develop residential protection services specifically designed for high-net-worth individuals vulnerable to criminal exploitation. The security industry learned from Marcus's experience that traditional household protection wasn't adequate for sophisticated criminal threats, explained security analyst Dr. Sarah Martinez. His case drove innovation in residential security services. Universities and law schools had invited Marcus to speak about his experience, using his case to teach students about criminal infiltration techniques and victim response strategies. Marcus Wellington represents the best possible response to criminal victimization, explained Harvard law professor David Chen. He transformed his experience into advocacy that has protected countless other people. The ongoing educational impact of Marcus's case continued expanding as more institutions recognized the value of his experience for training professionals who work with crime victims and investigate organized criminal operations. At 61, Marcus had found new purpose through his advocacy work and foundation activities. The Wellington Foundation had become one of the most effective anti-trafficking organizations in the Northeast, with programs that directly addressed the types of crimes Marcus had experienced. My goal is ensuring that no one else experiences what Elena put me through, Marcus explained during the Foundation's annual gala. Every trafficking victim we help represents a victory over the criminal organizations that prey on vulnerable people. The Foundation's work had expanded to include preventative education for wealthy households, helping other potential victims recognize signs of criminal infiltration before crimes occurred. Marcus had also developed expertise in financial crime investigation, using his banking background to help law enforcement trace money laundering operations similar to what Elena had conducted through his accounts. Marcus's financial expertise has been invaluable for investigating complex criminal operations, explained federal prosecutor James Rodriguez. He understands how criminals exploit legitimate financial systems. The personal satisfaction Marcus derived from his advocacy work had helped him process the trauma of Elena's betrayal while creating positive outcomes from his negative experience. Elena thought she was exploiting my grief and vulnerability, Marcus reflected. Instead, she ultimately led me to discover strength and purpose I might never have found otherwise. Marcus's ongoing mission included expanding the Foundation's work to other regions and developing new programs for supporting crime victims while preventing similar criminal operations. "We're not just helping people recover from crimes," Marcus explained. "We're building systems to prevent these crimes from happening in the first place." The impact of Marcus Wellington's case extended far beyond his individual experience, creating systemic changes in how law enforcement, security companies, and wealthy communities approach the threat of organized crime infiltration in residential settings. Federal authorities had used the intelligence gathered from Elena's operation to identify and investigate similar criminal networks across the country. The patterns Marcus helped document became the foundation for a new category of federal crime investigation focused on residential criminal enterprises. "The Wellington case opened our eyes to a form of organized crime we hadn't fully understood," explained Assistant FBI Director Michael Chen during a congressional hearing on residential security threats. "Criminals are increasingly sophisticated in their approach to infiltrating wealthy households." The investigation techniques Marcus developed while documenting Elena's crimes had been formalized into the Wellington Protocol, now used by federal agents investigating suspected criminal infiltration of residential properties. Marcus Wellington demonstrated that victims can become investigators when they approach criminal violations systematically, explained FBI Training Coordinator Dr. Sarah Martinez. His methodical evidence gathering provided law enforcement with tools we now use nationwide. The case had also influenced federal legislation addressing the intersection of domestic employment and organized crime. The Residential Security Act, passed by Congress, included provisions requiring enhanced background checks for household employees with access to valuable properties. Marcus's experience showed us that existing employment screening wasn't adequate for protecting against organized crime infiltration, explained Senator Patricia Williams, who sponsored the legislation. "We needed stronger protections for vulnerable property owners." Technology companies had invested heavily in developing residential security systems specifically designed to detect criminal activities in household settings. The Marcus Wellington detection system used artificial intelligence to monitor household activities and alert property owners to suspicious patterns. Traditional security systems weren't designed to detect organized crime operating within legitimate households, explained Secure Home Technologies CEO Lisa Torres. Marcus's case taught us that we needed different approaches to residential protection. The financial industry had also learned from Marcus's experience with money laundering through household accounts. Banks now had enhanced monitoring systems designed to detect unusual patterns in high-net-worth household expenses. Elena Vasquez's money laundering operation showed us vulnerabilities in how we monitor wealthy household accounts, explained banking security analyst Dr. Jennifer Walsh. Marcus's case led to new protocols that have prevented similar financial crimes. Insurance companies had developed new policy provisions addressing criminal use of residential properties, offering coverage specifically designed for victims of organized crime infiltration. The Wellington case created an entirely new category of insurance risk, explained industry analyst Robert Kim. "We had to develop products that protected property owners from criminal exploitation they couldn't reasonably anticipate." Academic institutions continued studying Marcus's case as an example of how organized crime adapts to exploit legitimate social and economic relationships. Criminal justice programs used his experience to teach students about recognizing and investigating sophisticated criminal operations. Marcus Wellington's case represents a new model of criminal-victim relationship, explained criminology professor Dr. Patricia Chen at Georgetown University. Elena Vasquez didn't just commit crimes against Marcus, she used his legitimate household to establish a criminal enterprise. The ongoing education and training impact of Marcus's experience had reached international audiences, with law enforcement agencies in Europe and Asia requesting consultation on similar criminal infiltration cases. Residential criminal infiltration is becoming a global phenomenon, explained Interpol analyst Maria Rodriguez. Marcus Wellington's case provides insights that law enforcement agencies worldwide are using to investigate similar crimes. The psychological aspects of Marcus's recovery had also influenced victim services programs. His transformation from isolation to advocacy demonstrated new approaches to helping crime victims process trauma while creating positive outcomes. Marcus showed us that victims can become advocates when they're given appropriate support and direction, explained trauma counselor Dr. Michael Torres. His foundation work represents a new model for victim empowerment. Today, Marcus Wellington lives peacefully in his restored Greenwich mansion, protected by comprehensive security systems and surrounded by legitimate household staff who undergo continuous monitoring and verification. At 61, he has transformed one of the most violating experiences possible into a foundation for protecting other vulnerable people from criminal exploitation. The basement where Elena Vasquez operated her brothel now houses the Wellington Foundation offices, where Marcus coordinates anti-trafficking efforts that have helped hundreds of victims and prevented dozens of similar criminal operations. The space that was meant to generate illegal profits now funds legitimate advocacy that protects people from the crimes Marcus survived. Elena thought my grief and trust made me an easy target, Marcus reflects. She assumed I would remain passive and isolated, allowing her criminal operation to continue indefinitely. But she underestimated what 30 years of investment banking had taught me about investigating complex financial schemes. Elena Vasquez remains in federal prison, serving her 15-year sentence with no possibility of early release. Her criminal network was completely dismantled, with associates serving sentences across multiple states and trafficking victims receiving comprehensive support and protection. The Wellington Foundation has recovered more than $8 million in settlements and donations, funding victim services and law enforcement training programs that have dismantled 23 similar criminal operations nationwide. Marcus's systematic approach to fighting organized crime has become the standard protocol used by federal agencies investigating residential criminal infiltration. Marcus Wellington proved that criminal victims can become criminal fighters, said FBI Director Patricia Chen during the 5th anniversary commemoration of Elena's arrest. His foundation work has prevented more crimes than we'll ever be able to count. But perhaps Marcus's greatest victory was personal, proving that trust violated doesn't have to mean trust destroyed forever. Elena's betrayal taught me to be more careful about who I trust, but it didn't make me cynical, Marcus concluded. I learned to verify trust systematically rather than granting it automatically. That's a valuable lesson that extends far beyond household management. Marcus's new marriage to Dr. Patricia Morrison represents his successful return to trusting relationships, built on communication and shared values rather than convenience and delegation. Their partnership in running the Wellington Foundation demonstrates that positive relationships can emerge from negative experiences. The story of Marcus Wellington proves that wealth doesn't have to mean vulnerability, that age brings wisdom rather than just target status, and that systematic thinking can defeat even sophisticated criminal organizations. When faced with exploitation, victims can choose to become advocates who protect others from similar violations. Marcus's basement has been transformed from a crime scene into a command center for fighting the same crimes that violated his property and trust. That transformation represents the power of turning trauma into purpose and violation into victory. If you enjoyed this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. Remember, trust should be earned systematically, and criminal violations can become foundations for protecting others when approached with intelligence and determination.